last week on the Nicoletti Show. Let's welcome him to the show. Without further ado, Ryan Rice. Ryan, welcome, buddy.
What's up, man?
How did you get started into this real estate industry?
I started listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast. What it did was it unlocked my brain and gave me some starter resources to jump into. So first thing was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I read that book and it kind of unlocked my mind. And my first thought was like, why not me? Like no matter what you say, if the seller doesn't like you,
Oh no, then you're out.
you're done.
Yeah, you're done.
You focus so much on the right rebuttals and the right process and oh, when he says this, I say this. When really, you just need to be listening to listen. And we'll do a little role play right now, okay?
Okay.
Tell me how you feel as the seller, okay? Tell me you want $100,000 for your house.
I want $100,000 for my house.
Gotcha. Yeah, Al, I mean, if we paid you 100, we'd lose about 30 grand.
Yeah, that's going to make me feel different about it.
Feel different, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, especially getting into sales, they do that word vomit in their sentence. They'll say the right thing, but then they'll just fill it with so much like emptiness, and it communicates such weakness in your tone. And like sellers can smell how weak you are.
Oh, yeah. No,
And if they can smell how weak you are, then those are the sellers that all of a sudden, right before you give the offer, they got 93 questions for you. Who even are you guys?
How do you handle it with like, I got to talk to my lawyer?
So with the lawyer one, we're going to try to see if we can all get on a call together. It depends on how busy the attorney is.
So you believe there's actually a lawyer?
It really just depends. It depends on
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it depends where it comes out. If it comes out after the offer, then I'm questioning the reality of if there's a lawyer because I've already given them the number. But before we ever give the offer, we shoot for influencers. So that's why I asked the question. So this is before I ever give you a number. I asked the very simple question, how would anyone be upset with you that you didn't speak with them first before making the decision to sell his property?
We have the mug just for you. This is the Nicoletti Show mug.
Let's go.
Yes. And
Oh, yes. That's what I was hoping for.
yes, the shirt, man.
Oh, and it feels nice.
So much fun with you, man. It's always great seeing you, man. It's always
great
great.
to see you. I appreciate this so much.
And we're back, everybody. Wow. It feels like months ago that happened, and it did. I mean, Ryan Rice, what an episode that was. If you missed that back in June, July, what an episode. Definitely go back and check that out. Ryan has been scaling his business over the last 3 years, and he's doing it at a high volume and really growing his team and going after different kinds of leads. Lots of info there. And of course, you can find all of our content on the Nicoletti Show. Scan the QR code at the top of the screen right there. You're going to get everything from the show to probate education. I mean, who doesn't want probate education? Everybody wants that. So check that out there and all the other messy things that we talk about with probate and all the crazy stuff. So we're back. We're live in the studio. Yes, we were on hiatus for a while, and it actually feels great. You know, I'm back in the seat. Michael Williams is back in the seat. We're ready to do this. And, you know, I was thinking over the break, I was like, who do we have to bring on? Who do we need to bring on that can bring the boom, that can really shake things up, that can bring that fire episode, that can help a lot of people out there? And I was like, we need to bring back Logan Fullmer. This guy, there's so much to talk about with Logan. And I love this guy from the minute I met him at Wholesaling Live in San Antonio. That was crazy. And we hit it off, and he's doing big things. So we're going to dive in with Logan on so much tonight. But I got two things I really want to cover in opening thoughts. So the first thing I think that all of you should be doing in your business is every quarter, you as the CEO, and you can do it with your team, but you as the CEO needs to really sit down and see where things are internally in your business. Not just on the lead flow, not just on the marketing, but on things that are driving the business internally. For example, I think it's really important when you've started your business, it's really easy to throw money everywhere, charge things on the credit card, throw expenses out the window. And of course, there's a reason for you doing that with marketing or just other expenses. But at a certain point, what you really want to do is make this machine a profitable machine. Make this something that is going to have longevity. If you are not taking time to review your business, to review things, to hire somebody like a CPA and a bookkeeper to really understand where are things going, right? Or maybe your strategies in your business. What is generating ROI? Like, we throw the word ROI out there all the time, but like, how do we actually understand and apply it to ourselves? Like, what I'm about to do is their return on investment. If you are not analyzing that every quarter, you're not helping yourselves. So I challenge everybody that listens to this online, on Spotify, iTunes, and every place that we have this, everybody that's a listener, take a step and go review this. Take a week and go do this. I am constantly thinking about these kinds of things. I am constantly thinking about what is working. And I talked about what is working and what doesn't work about a year ago. And it's no different now. And I will say it makes a drastic difference in your bottom line. It makes a drastic difference in understanding your team, the team roles. What's your team look like? What roles, what things do you have to delegate? Do you have to keep things lean? Do you have to keep things and maybe find different pieces to your business? So I challenge you to find that. And the other thing is, I've been getting some interesting probate cases coming in. And I think it's important for me to talk about this one concept tonight. A lot of investors get a probate case and they're thinking, well, wait a second, I got a potential heir. It's the cousin. It's this person. I don't know if I have the right person. We got to back this up. If you are finding a potential probate case and you need to know who the heirs are, let me tell you, I've talked about this at the RIAs. I've talked about this. I've done a reel on it. You got to know what the probate Macarena is, okay? And what the probate Macarena is a way for you all to remember who to look for in a potential probate, at least in Florida. But you need to know this because you have to be able to say, well, if it's not this person, it's this person. It's this person, it's that person. So you know what we're going to do on the Al Nicoletti Show tonight? We're doing the probate Macarena. And Michael Williams has the camera, and he's going to zoom out for this. So let's do it. We are going to start with the probate Macarena. Anytime you get a probate deal, you always start with, is there a will? Well, if there's no will, then you go spouse. No spouse, kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, none of those. Parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, none of those. Brothers, sisters, half-brothers, half-sisters, nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles. We just had that case with the cousins, and it goes on and on. You have to know what this line is so you know who you're looking for. And when you know who you're looking for, it's going to help you on other cases. So again, if you're running into the same scenario, that is something you just cannot unsee. When I do that Macarena at the events, people tell me that their spouses actually start doing it in the kitchen. So I hope that helps somebody out there that's trying to find these deals. You will remember what you just saw, and I hope you actually get to see it live because it's not the same on video, but I wanted you to all see it. So with that being said, we are in for a treat tonight with a guy that we've had on the show before, but we have to have him back again. And Logan Fullmer is doing the craziest, wackiest deals, and we need a guest like this. So without further ado, let's welcome him to the show. Logan Fullmer, what's up, baby?
Al, it's always a pleasure.
Love having you, man. Love talking to you. Love seeing the content. And I'm always learning from seeing your stuff as well. I'm learning from the videos. I learned from the crazy stuff. And a lot of people love watching you. So, Logan, I got to ask you, what have you been up to lately?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I mean, I'm a husband. I'm a father. I have 4 kids. We're running this business. There's a lot going on. We try to stay healthy, fit, happy. So we use all 24 hours of those hours. We use every one of them.
That's good. That's great. And I got to say, the last time you were on, about 2 years ago, the market was in a completely different position than it is now.
Yeah.
Deal flow is in a completely different position. Interest rates, completely different position. And I got to know from your end of things, what have you been doing differently in the last 2 years that you weren't doing before?
The neat thing is I hypothesized about this a lot, and I really firmly believed it. In fact, I bet everything I had on it, but until the showdown happens, you just don't know. And I'm very thankful to say that ain't shit changed. Nothing is different with one exception. So let me back up for a minute. As you know, we buy super distressed real estate from anywhere from 10 cents on the dollar to 50 cents on the dollar, more or less. And we would sell it, we buy it, we don't wholesale, we fix all the title problems or access problems or whatever it is, zoning problems, and then take it back to the market. So we take property from an inefficient market because there are no buyers for these messes, resolve it and take it to an efficient marketplace, which is usually CoStar, LoopNet, or MLS. And we never look for top dollar. We might sell for 95 cents on the dollar just to get it to sale. We care about velocity of the capital. We get it moving. So 95 cents on the dollar is normally our deal. Figure out what the comps are, drop it 5% and it vanishes. Well, I always expected that if the market changed, we wouldn't be able to get 95 cents on the dollar anymore. As the market is falling or weaker, you have to discount more than everybody, and you don't know what that looks like. Thankfully, because we buy cheap, we were able to play the price lowering game anytime we needed and still not lose money at any one point and continue the velocity through our inventory. So I always told myself, we're not going to lose money, even if the market falls by half, because we're buying so cheap. We just have to maintain that velocity. And we started to see our inventory turn ratio start to get longer. You talked about managing a business earlier. I'm looking at our inventory hold time and it's starting to grow just like days on market. And I realized, our input there that we can affect is the price. We need to lower the price until ours is the most attractive and they'll sell. So after a couple of weeks of doing that, we realized we were selling at about 80 cents on the dollar last year. But since I bought at 20 to 50 cents on the dollar, I'm still making money. I've still got velocity. The machine still runs.
Right. And so one of the big specialties is getting into these messy distressed deals. The distressed deals is where it's at. And we'll start there before we get to the bigger picture of how that leads into the greater stuff that people should get into. But you're still finding these distressed deals out there, right?
Yeah. Early on, I recall watching the wholesale and flipping market start to mature a little bit because so many people were getting in it. And I remember folks started asking me, when is your market going to mature? When is your business model going to mature? When is there going to be too much competition? And I remember thinking, well, I don't know. And I was careful to not tell everyone what I was doing. So I thought, oh my God, little me might affect something. I realized here's when these type of deals will stop existing. When humans stop making poor decisions and when humans stop fighting, which we know is never.
Right.
And it's a lot of work to do this. So it's very efficient on capital because you get to use a little capital. It goes a long way, but it's labor intensive. And I believe that's a barrier that keeps a lot of people out. So I don't know, man. I think I've got a wide open road to gas it for the rest of this career anyway.
That's great. And it seems that it's working because a lot of other people have referenced what you get into and model it after that to say, hey, I want to do what Logan's doing, whether it's getting into the partial interest game, buying out different people, doing that partition or getting into some of the larger scale, maybe industrial, commercial properties. But one thing that you and I were talking about the other day was how you guys have been really getting into the land developments, right? Yeah. So aside from the distress part, which we can come back to, but the land developments and how big that's been, we've had a lot of guests that talk about how hot land is. And for you to tell me about how that's a huge component now of your business.
Yeah.
Where has that gone for you?
So let me talk about why that that was important to me at a time. So when I'm investing in real estate, but essentially I'm flipping it. My interest in 90% of this stuff is short term. I'm buying it, solving the problems, and selling it. It creates cash. It creates cash flow like a manufacturing plant that spits TVs out the back. I spit fixed titles out the back. So that causes cash and that causes good financials. But ultimately, I am a real estate investor at heart. And I got tired of the single family portfolio. So I started buying warehouses, I started buying apartment complexes, office, stuff like that. And I can't get quite the discount on that I can on, the single family and the land stuff. But it's a fair discount. I get a great return and it really creates a lot of cash flow. That's where the money goes. But while we were in the middle of sourcing commercial assets, I came across, we flip a lot of land here, whether it's distressed land or just land that someone underprices and sells to us for less than it's worth. And I came across some parcels that had much more value than I anticipated. And early on, I'd done some small infill subdivisions, take an acre and break it up into 10 lots kind of thing. But this was 100 acres at the edge of Austin, Texas. And we realized the seller we called at the nick of time when they had just gotten out of contract with a big developer. And they were willing to sell it to me if I closed in 60 days at the same price the developer contracted at 3 years ago. And I thought, oh, wow, well, A, why did they cut bait? Long story short, I realized this is when the interest rate shot up only 2 years ago or 2.5. Interest rates shot up and developers were cutting their last phases of developments, keeping the first couple, but cutting the last one. This was one of those. So I ended up getting help from a fee developer to complete it. And this site I bought for $7 million. And it looks like my exit with the mud's about 28 million in a 30-month process. Yeah.
So I've had in a 30-month process.
It's huge. Now, remember, I don't get all that money. When this happened, I didn't have enough cash to pay for it by myself. So I brought in a couple investors. So I got to give them some return.
Sure.
I also gave a third to the developer. I told him, look, I got the cash put together and I got the land. You're the dude that's going to take this across the finish line. So I need you to put money in it, but I'll give you a third of this profit, dude. And that's the key to making it work. So technically I'm a land developer that has 2,000 lots under development between Austin to Dallas right now, but I find land, put the money together, and a true developer actually gets the entitlement. Once that deal really worked, I realized this is a great use for cash. And again, it's not cash flow from, a warehouse or something, but when you can put in $7 million and get out 28 in a 30-month period, I think I need more. So
yeah,
I got 3 of them going now.
So I think people would say, well, how do I find a deal like that? Right.
Well, you know how Tom Brady wins a Super Bowl? He doesn't. He doesn't go win a Super Bowl. He goes out there and practices. He goes out there and plays every single week. He lives this game. And he happened to win half a dozen Super Bowls along the way. That's how this happened. I didn't set out to be a developer. I'm in the deal flow. I had tons and tons of leads coming in. We're vetting them and rejecting or accepting. And what we were smart enough to do is when a couple of them would come across our plate, like some commercial deals, that's what kind of got us into it. We're like, whoa, this is a no-brainer. We got into deals that were outside of our category because they were no-brainers. And we learned a lot during the no-brainer that there's no way we could have botched. And then we said, you know what? We like this. Let's do some more. That's how we got into that, man.
Amazing. So what have been your best strategies, though, for finding these developers themselves and building that relationship? Is it just out in the community and other people that you know, or is this something that you've just done some outreach? Or, phone.
If I had to trade everything that I have right now, the one thing I would keep is this Rolodex. And what I have right here, I know I can get on the phone and get something to happen. The way we found our fee developer right now is I'm not going to list the public company that he worked for as a president of land development for 15 years, but it's a big public. I called him and said, I have this deal that you guys cut. Will you come do this with me? Left his career and started a business line with me on the phone.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And it just happens like that. I mean,
it happened like that. And I only had one, and I don't need to find a lot of developers. I needed one, just that one.
And then one other point you made in that process with either finding the land or the developers is raising the capital to actually get it.
Yeah. I could pay for half that land myself at the moment. And let's face it, I'm kind of greedy. I don't want to give anybody else a share because I want it. But I also knew that I didn't have enough and I wasn't going to walk away from this deal. The interesting part is this is the first deal where I ever raised capital. And my dentist, all the attorneys I know, people that live in my neighborhood, everybody's always asking, can I get in your deals with you? They're so good. And I'm like, no, I can afford it still. And the craziest thing is because I won't let any of them in and they're great returns and I talk about it openly, they all want in. When it was time to raise this money, I called 6 people for them, put the money in. It took a week to raise $4 million is what I had to raise. 6 phone calls, done. But that was based on, just like I said, Tom Brady goes to practice. He goes to games. He does everything he's supposed to do for years. And then when it's time, it works. I just made those calls 10 years into this business and it worked.
It's incredible. And that's why you have to keep those relationships and maintain them and bring them in on other deals, right? That's the whole idea of either partnering, JVing with, and I can think about that on things that I've seen. I've seen other investors get with each other on deals because 2 heads made a better deal, right? So I love that. I love hearing that. So, one thing that you also talked about with me was you get into a lot of these distressed deals, but you don't look at the distressed deals as the end game.
Yeah, right.
You look at this as a game to the greater game.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because let's start at the distress level and how you get to that next level, like what you're doing with that. A lot of these deals get messy. You talked about it on the last episode. You pick up these deals with 60 heirs and you buy out the interest in partition. We can't forget that. If you missed that, Logan talked about that. But talk to us about the messy deals that lead to the greater game.
Those became a skill. Early on, I wasn't setting out to build a business line that no one else really had. I had less capital than a lot of people, but I had a lot of time. And so I needed something that was efficient with capital. And the market started to get more people in it and pricing was changing and margins were fading. And I just was like, God, man, I gotta figure out how to get better deals. It was always about a better deal. And for 2 reasons. One, I wanted to make money, but I also wanted to protect myself. If I get it as cheap as possible and I can account for every element of risk, then no matter what goes wrong, I'm not going to lose money. I'm not going to risk this hard-earned capital. Rule one is never risk principal. And I did start out with that in mind. As I started to develop these projects that worked well, I realized they were everywhere and thought, how do I pick the deals that are messy enough to get an extreme discount on that other people can't fix, but not so messy they become my third arm for the rest of my life? And when I honed down on that, I realized I took my not duty cycle, cash conversion cycle from 12 to 18 months down to 4. And now I realized, whoa, these are popping out of here like a machine. One example right now, one of our business lines has, we'll look at this report in a minute because it's really telling.
Yeah, anything we could
see.
But
it's got 63 units in inventory. This is inventory. This isn't deals for the year. This is current inventory. And with 120-day turn time, it's going to be a little bit longer on this. But I can turn this same amount of inventory 2 times a year. So that should put 150 transactions through this one business line in my office. It's pure messy deals. And as we started to understand we could burn through these, none of them were the product we wanted to keep. And I realized this is revenue. This is income. But it's a lot of work and I love it. At 42 years old, man, there's nothing I'd rather be doing than this at all. Truthfully, if I didn't come to work for the rest of my life, I don't know that I need another dollar. I think I can make it work the rest of my life. But man, this is good stuff. It's fun. So as I started to realize it put capital off, I said, what do I do with this capital? I got bandwidth. I'm excited. I'm interested. And that's how it started to become an income source to fund the portfolio, the land development deal. But the most important part was creating a business. And earlier you talked about early on, just putting stuff on credit cards, figuring it out. When do you start working on it? And the way I grew my business was getting a couple younger guys that were really smart and hardworking and make them partners and train them. And I own a share of their business. They own the other share. and I help them develop businesses. So we have 5 business lines in this office, all doing that, managed and partially owned by an individual partner. And we grew businesses under them. So I got to help each of those guys build their businesses. So that was how I decided to grow it. But, capital really starts to happen at that point. We said, guys, we're going to need retirement plans. Like, what if you get hit by a bus, Ryan? Like, what's your wife going to do next year after we sell off all your stuff? Like, what's she going to do? That's why we started building something more with the money.
That is very, very helpful for people that aren't thinking about that long-term, that longevity in their business, right? They're not thinking about the personal or the end side of this. They're always thinking in the now, right? This deal, like in the current. And for you guys who have made a model like this is going to last and sustain itself, right? But it struck me when you explained how you're taking this model and you're doing maybe the single family homes, the messy land, all that. But then you're also taking that cash and pumping it into the bigger projects.
Yep. That's how
Talk
we pay
to us
for it.
about that.
Yeah, that's where the cash goes. So early on, we would buy a $50,000 lot for 10 grand. All of us had $10,000. So that's how we were building this business. And as the capital grew, we started to realize, okay, we can get low cost of capital from local banks with credit lines because we have great financials. We have CDs of our own sitting in the bank we can collateralize. We have property to collateralize. And it got to the point where we have unsecured credit lines now because our financials were in shape and looked really good. We spent a lot of time making sure all that was on point. So we started to build a real business. We got an office, we have employees, we have process and procedures, we've got accounting, we got AR, we got AP, we got a legal department. We have all those pieces, and it really started to build something. But there are more pieces to it than that. I kind of lost my train of thought because I was staring into this light where I was going with that.
But you actually were able to transition to a bigger question in where I'm going with this. And that is, you've been able to do the lead gen, find the deals, find the leads, but then you just really went into the internal side of your process, right? And I think for a lot of people that have seen you online, seen social media, seen you at the live events, what they see is all the deals. They see here's what we snagged it up for, here's what we wholesaled it out for, here's what we've done. Yeah. But I think where a lot of investors struggle is understanding how to operate internally with their team to make it that machine. So yeah.
What they don't see is we've got 2 folks that run this operation. One of my business partners is the finance officer. I'm the operating officer. We have 5 business partners. Yeah. And their employees within that operation. We have 20 people in this office. So while you see me yapping on the internet all the time, there's 20 people here. So we have a real organization. We have workflows. And strangely enough, if you watch my Instagram videos, I'm talking about every deal. Well, the truth is those deals are done in the companies. I'm not the one talking to the seller on those deals. I'm the one managing the litigation and running a business. Those are the 2 things that I do. But I'm not shaking hands. I'm not arguing with a seller. I'm not down at the tax office trying to work it out. I'm not doing that. So having the right role cut out as we got people in our business really made it easy for me to spend time working on it. I'll give you an example. There are a lot of processes we had to clean up over time. And admittedly, we still have some things we need to fix. But, we had times where we have to fix all these systems. For example, we file temporary restraining orders 2 or 3 a month to prevent foreclosures from happening. And the bond is $100 to $800. Doesn't seem like a lot of money, but if you forget to recover that bond afterwards, I have $50,000 sitting down here in one district court registry to go pick up. And there wasn't a process for that. So what happens is because we're able to look at our books, we have a bookkeeper that produces books that are reviewed by my financial partner. Every single month, I can look at it and say, what the hell is this $47,000 doing over here in impound balance, basically? Someone needs to go down there and pick that up. Or here was another kicker. When we were wholesaling a lot of commercial property, we had a fatal error in one of our contracts where we didn't refund the earnest money to us at the closing of the sale. So we were basically we were giving the end buyer credit for our original earnest money. And on commercial deals, it could be $10,000 to $50,000. Now, it was not easy to see in a double close transaction because the money would come in and you get a bunch of money out, and it was missed. For about 100 transactions, we missed that. And we did the math. It was about $300,000.
Wow.
Now, when you step back and say, oh my gosh, that's remarkable. We identified it, we made a change, and we fixed it. But still, in that $300,000 that we forfeited, I think the net was about $4 million during that cycle of business. So it's crazy to think that you could actually miss that. However, because the business is really pretty transparent and has people working on it, those things don't go very far.
And who caught the $300,000 error? Was it bookkeeping again?
That was my business partner, who I'm thankful I got him out. He was a financial officer. He was a tax partner at a fourth largest CPA firm and came to work with me and started this business. He was actually doing our bookkeeping up until last year. That's like a $20 an hour job. Yeah. Finally got him out of that, got an accountant hired, and he gets the time to sit down and look at the books instead of being in the middle of freaking journal entries. It's incredible. It's embarrassing.
I gotta tell you, Logan, getting a bookkeeper was the best thing for me to understand what's going on, right? And I'm sure you guys have seen that as well. And I think when you start your business, yes, you have the CPA for the taxes, but when at a certain point, you have to literally get somebody to categorize everything. And it's not just categorizing. I even went through some stuff like last month and I was like, what is this? What is that? Where did this go? Wait a second. I didn't realize that FedEx now for a prepaid label is $90. And then you do 90 times 300 cases. And it's like that, those numbers add up. So
now you need to make sure to start billing those back to your client, and you change a little process that adds back in $19,000 in the first 6 months.
And it makes a difference. Yes.
You're right.
Yes.
A lot of entrepreneurs suck at that though. They're deal guys. Now, I'm a deal guy at heart, but I'm a big partner guy. I'll never do I don't own anything of my own. Even my home, that's community property. My wife owns half of that. I always have partners, man, because you got it's 6 of us total. Ryan, Dave, Kyle, Bill, Logan, Jake. Yeah, there's 6 of us total. Dude, our IQ score combined is much higher than adding all 6 together. It is remarkable what comes out of those meetings, man.
And what's that like? Because like having partner meetings, I mean, that's where the real discussions, the real decision making happens. How do you guys mesh in those moments?
You know, I'm the managing partner. So at the end of the day, what I say goes. And I don't rule with an iron fist at all. But what I did do is I did it right in the beginning. I would do deals with a guy for an entire year. They'd come work in our office side by side. We were like helping each other do deals. I would train them my way. I would help them close their deals. Like I was their mentor for the whole year. But during that year, I got to watch, how does he talk to his wife on the phone? How does he treat his children? Does he shortchange anybody? When there's a dispute, how do we deal with it? And there are a couple guys that after that year, I didn't think were going to be good for us and decided not to become a partner with them. But the other guys, I got to date them, so to speak, for the year. And when that was over, at that point, there was no guesswork. I already knew exactly who'd be a good partner and who wouldn't. So I chose folks that were independent enough to be able to run their own thing, but weren't so fiercely independent, so prideful and egotistical that they couldn't have somebody who has another role that says, hey, that's my role. I'm going to make that decision. Defer to me. Okay, that's what we're going to do. We really set up a good operation with folks. And we had 7 partners. One of the partners was cut after a couple of years because of personal differences. Otherwise, we have the same group of guys running for 10 years, and guys have added along the way.
It's amazing. And I haven't met Kyle, but definitely have seen Ryan a few times, and swell guy. I mean, Ryan, he knows his stuff. He gets the game. He knows the numbers, and it's like, it works. And
we picked good human beings that were hardworking and smart. And that really made a big difference. Our meetings, we've had a couple of times where folks feel very strongly about stuff. And I'm not an asshole. Like, there are times where I give in a little bit because it's like a marriage. I get that.
Yeah. And I remember you told me about the importance of having a small team meaning that's going to be a great process, like keeping things more in-house as opposed to like outsourcing things. And I think a lot of people start doing that in their businesses. They're trying to outsource third parties. You like the in-house. Talk to us about that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. The golden era of flipping and wholesaling, I don't know if it's over with, but because social media channels and YouTube is what it is today, the last 10 years of real estate investing has changed so much faster and more remarkably than it ever has in a 10-year period. And so many services started to be offered to folks. So you could literally work from your house and hire a cold caller, a remote lead manager, a realtor from a different city. You could like build this whole team that was, none of it was in-house. And I know people running like real businesses like that, legitimate income, real businesses. But when the market changed and things just started to look different, that got a lot tougher. And we've never been big at outsourcing stuff. We want good quality people. We'll pay them what they're worth. And they all come to this office and we have good camaraderie and we make it work. And we've always believed in that. So when we started to see the market shifting and a lot of these virtual teams having trouble and some of these things not working, it told us that we knew we did the right thing. But I've just never felt good about having to get on a Zoom all day with a remote person. Like some folks make it work, but I hate it. I'm a little 42 years old, so I'm not antiquated, but I ain't 19. I want to walk down the hall and talk to somebody. And that's what we built this on.
I totally understand. And there's days that I'm here and I'm going, I wish we were all in person to talk about that. You know, there's definitely great benefits being virtual because you bring down the overhead of having an office and
Sure.
But I completely understand that. Go for it.
I'll tell you, one of the things that mattered to me is I never wanted to have 200 people in a massive office. I like people, but not that much. But what I did learn early on is I always had really high quality people and I was never afraid to pay for them. And I'll tell you what, having folks in my office that are much higher than the average in terms of IQ, bandwidth, interest, and attitude, things like that, it's a better place. Who does this the best is Blackstone. They're the behemoth, but they hire the highest quality people on this earth. And they have the biggest budget to do it. And they destroy everybody because there's no one smarter or better than them. We're nowhere near them. But when it comes to a 20-person investing office in San Antonio, Texas, we've done better than the average. But by having high quality people, you don't need as many of them. We're much more efficient, much more productive. You know, we talked about this earlier, and I referenced the numbers so I could tell you. I pulled an export out of Salesforce so I could look at it.
Yeah.
And I have one team. They're our most productive team here. But you have a partner who's the manager of that group. You have a acquisitions telephone guy, basically sales guy. You have a researcher and you have an administrative person. There are 4 people on this team. That's it. There is one remote worker who helps with data and stuff like that, but it's a 4.5 person team because the other person doesn't work full time. Right now, there's 63 units in inventory. Well, they'll turn that twice in the year. And the total cost we have, I actually thought it was less, but it's $3.4 million in total, $3.488 million in total expenses. That's every nickel we have into this stuff. And the fair market value is $14 million. So you're looking at about a $10 million margin on $14 million. It's incredibly productive. It's incredibly fast moving. It's hard for people to do that with clean deals.
Right.
We've gotten to the point where we can get just messy enough to get a discount, but not so messy it's our new life partner, and burn through them like that. And that's the value of a high quality, high paid, good team. Dude, my sales guy make 300 grand this year, man. A researcher will be like 80 grand.
And they're doing well. That's pretty well. Yeah. I mean, just getting these deals. And it's really crazy you brought this up because I actually had a question in my signature questions for you on this, but we're going to pull that out and ask you now. How do you go about finding the best talent in the game?
Well, it's kind of the same way I raised money. I talk about who we are. I talk about what we do. I talk about how we do it and why. And you know what I found that translates, in my opinion, we're hardworking, We're honest. We might be a little aggressive, but we're completely honest. We won't do anything wrong or illegal. We share with others and we keep a good reputation. And by doing that and talking about it, people see it and they want to be involved. The next step that people miss, though, is we'll get 50 applications or 100 applications for one role. Picking the best person out of them and not picking the one that you like the most or you think is the most fun, picking the one that has the IQ and the bandwidth, getting to that is important. So we've really worked hard to be able to do that. By doing that, man, it's big.
Let's dive deeper.
But don't be afraid to pay. You can do all those things and tell people, but if you're not going to pay well, that person, I found this early on. I was getting good people, but I was still being careful about the spend. And someone would go take a job at Johnson & Johnson, like literally pharmaceutical company, and do sales there. And I would call them and say, why didn't you take my job? And they flat out say, this one pays X amount more. And I thought, I can get the quality that Johnson & Johnson can have if I pay 20% more. I'll do it.
And it works.
It works.
I love it.
My personal assistant makes $90,000 a year. That's a lot for a personal assistant, I think. But, she's worth every nickel. I probably should pay her more.
I totally understand. And if they do everything that you want and they get it done, and it means it's the best, right? They're dependable, they're reliable. It's very difficult to find the talent. And I never thought about it that way with you guys putting your stuff out there and then talking about it, that you've then translated that to people actually getting in touch with you to send their resume. That's very interesting. And then
that's one of the values of social media. And I didn't anticipate that would happen. I started doing social media to build relationships, frankly, for deals. And I had no idea what was going to happen, but we did recognize that very early on that it was a great lead source for talent.
Incredible. I love that. And, another thing that we touched on, which I think a lot of investors are doing, is they're getting a lot of these lead lists, Logan, and they're mailing 5,000, 10,000 people. And I know that people like McLean Bobbitt believe in this, and I know you believe in it, but focusing on like a sliver of a percentage of those and going really hard into those leads. So of 5,000, you go to 100.
Go further than everybody else.
And that makes a difference for you guys, right? So talk to us about the difference in that.
So while we were wholesaling commercial real estate, we would call between 10 and 50,000 leads a month with VAs, and we had 10 salespeople in here taking the leads as they would mature, all that kind of stuff. And that worked for that model, but for the distressed stuff, it does not. We don't get tricky, dude. We buy a delinquent tax list, and that is it. For a county, it costs $200. That same list is good all year round, sometimes longer. It's a great list. We filter a delinquent. There's literally no magic to the sauce. This is all it is. Delinquent tax list or a tax foreclosure list. Either of those two work really well. We'll filter it by location, price point of the taxes. I want someone to owe more than 2 years of taxes. So you can make a ratio, because in Texas, it's about 0.25% is the tax rate. You can run a ratio that'll tell you what delinquent taxes is for 1 year based on the assessed value of the property, and you multiply that times 2 and basically filter by that. I want someone to owe more than 2 years because they're beyond the point of lying to themselves that they're going to get caught up. They realize they face the music finally, more than 2 years. And then after that, I don't necessarily have a cutoff, except for I don't want the taxes to be more than maybe 40% of the value of the property. So those are the ratios we use. And once we narrow it down, we'll take that list and then we'll sort through it a little bit closer. We have some scrapers and some data tools. That's where it gets a little complicated, where we can look and it'll run reports in the land records to see if it's got multiple owners or through the tax accounts, things like that. But once we get it to that point, yes, we dig. We find the people because we find the people that others don't, because folks that are using a bulk skip tracing to run the list through a machine, it spits back a phone number to a dead guy. Usually these folks in the tax office account are dead. We're finding the owners through an obituary search, through data program search, it's TLO, things like that. And at that point, we dump all of the related parties' contact information into it. And that is a completed file. It takes somebody about 5 to 8 minutes to get all that together, run the searches, and get it complete the file in our Salesforce. And now you have 5 or 20 phone numbers to the believed owners and go to the next file. We'll have someone doing that. And another guy's just ring, ring, ring right through it. That's how our process works. Now, another point that I would say is I don't want folks to get deceived and think that we research for 3 days on each file. We don't. We research just enough to know there's problems, just enough to get a bunch of phone numbers that are likely related, and then get on the phone. Once we get a person on the phone and get engaged and we start to get some serious discussions happening, then we say, okay, if we think we can line them up at a pretty reasonable amount, now we'll start the real digging. We've got private investigators or retired FBI agents. We've got it's a long list of resources. At that point, we'll really deploy. And that's when we'll find every single thing we need to know about everyone in the family for the last 100 years.
And it takes a lot of time to build that kind of team up, right? Those resources. I mean, a retired FBI agent. I mean, having that in your back pocket, right? But that's building that team together. And I will say, as far as the tax delinquents, that is definitely one of the hottest ones, right?
To me, that's far and above the rest. You can list stack and find tax delinquent with code compliance or tax delinquent with this or with that. Man, I don't complicate it, because if they're behind on taxes, they got a real problem. And if it's 2 years behind, they're at the point where they know they're probably not going to solve it anymore. The only list better than that is the tax foreclosure list. When they list the sale postings, it'll sell within a month or so. But the only way you need to go after that list is if you're really experienced, because those have 21 days until execution. And you got to we can go after that one because we know what we're doing. Like, we got it.
Yeah.
We file restraining orders, probably 5 every single month across the companies. So even we can't stop it, but we got to get some judicial intervention to get some breathing room. If we need that, the average dude needs to go after delinquent taxes, not the sale, in my mind.
So it's a little bit different in the timing in Florida, but I totally get what you mean by you really have to know what you're doing, because the time frame is short. And if you don't have everything together and you don't have the heirs together, and you don't have all the people under contract, that thing is going to tax deed auction. Yep. And unless you put that thing in the bag, I don't think people want to pay off $20,000, $15,000 in back taxes and then have no assurance that they're actually going to get paid for that if things fall apart. So like you said, you got to really know what you're doing with that.
Yeah.
And those again, but they're opportunities, and there's a lot of the tax delinquents and tax deed auctions that go up all the time.
We've had a couple really interesting ones that we were so close to the wire. So as an owner, you have a right to pay off those taxes up until the sale happens. So like if the bidding starts at 10 a.m. on the first property, maybe the 20th property won't start till 10:30. If you show up at 10:27 before this property starts to bid, you can still pay the taxes. We have had people come to us that morning. We have full title reports. Everything is ready to go. They just wouldn't come across the line. So we were like, it's over with. They would literally show up to our office and say, let's do it. And we're like, you're fucking nuts. But if we can get there and pay the tax off in time, we'll come back and then pay you. Make them sign the contract. We're rushing to get cashier's checks, taking them with us, driving down to the sale, paying the sheriff in between bidding. Like, it's been that crazy tight. But those are whopper deals, super home runs. We dropped everything for it.
That's crazy. Do you guys have surplus stuff over there in Texas?
We do, and they're not assignable. So the trick is you have to be listed in the lawsuit in the final order to get that. Once an order is issued and a sale notice happens, you can't buy those rights. That's been outlawed in Texas years ago.
Have you thought of ever buying out the interest and then saying, let's just let it ride and go to tax deed auction? And
I probably have one a month like that now. And the reason is they will ultimately solve all your title problems. Sometimes the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Sometimes we get into a deal and it's not what we expected, or it's problematic, or sometimes the tax bill is really high. And there are times where, like, I've had 30 owners and we can find them if we put in the resources, but sometimes it just becomes not worth it anymore. And we say, we will actually petition and ask for them to wrap the sale up, and we'll send in all the contact information so they can get good service across everybody else and ask them to get it done. So we'll let it go. Then we'll go get our excess proceeds, or sometimes, depending on the way it looks, if the tax lawsuit's been filed, but a final order hasn't been issued, we'll buy a person's interest out and then go in and intervene in the lawsuit as a defendant and get our names registered in the suit as a defendant. So when the final order of sale comes out, we're listed as a defendant and we have the right to collect excess proceeds. Now we leave that as pressure, and we'll continue to negotiate with others. And if we can't get all the deals cut like we like, we'll let the sale happen. And that's still our ultimate exit.
Interesting how Texas is different. And that's the thing, is like, when you are in this, you have to know that every state is different with their laws. So like Logan has become very immersed in the law, the statutes, the underwriting. He talked about it even in the first episode, understanding underwriting requirements, statutes, learning this stuff. Because if you're in that state, you got to know it's different in Florida. And so Logan, you're big on that. You're big on research and education with this.
You know, the good news is, and you know this, how this works, probably learned it in law school. A lot of times states would adopt statutory code from other states because it was easier that way instead of just writing theirs like from scratch. So I would say there's about 2 or 3 different renditions of the way property sales and probates and all that happen. And depending on which state you're in, it's one of those 2 or 3 renditions. So like you've got the required probate states, and then you have states that allow affidavit of heirships. Those are 2 of the biggest factors. Then you have states that have delinquent taxes and have tax liens and have tax deeds. We got that. And then, gosh, there was one other big difference I was thinking about. It'll come to me in a minute, but there are a few major differences. But if you know that, pick the states that have similar rules and you can go kill it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just learning and understanding and just researching. Right. And then, of course, finding the right person or partner or attorney that you can talk to that gets into this kind of stuff. Right. That's big.
It is. You know, that's actually a really good point. Everyone says, can you refer me to an attorney? The challenge is, if there's these 3, in my mind, there's about 3 groups of lawyers. There's the big firms that have a whole ton of employees and they got associates that can pound out work, but they're the best at billing. So they leave no 15-minute time block unbilled, and they're expensive per hour, but they're great. Then you have mid-sized firms, and then you have the solo shop. Mm-hmm. The mid-sized firms is typically where I like to operate because you can get enough folks in the office with enough assistance and enough work to answer your calls, be responsive, keep a docket moving quickly. And then you have the small guys who, in my mind, are just very hard to deal with because they're answering their phone, they're making the invoice, they never call you back on time, they draft their own pleadings. Like, it's really hard to work with a one-stop shop dude. So there's 3 different categories. About 2/3 of my business is with the mid-sized firms. And then about 1/3 of it now, because projects are bigger and it's more meaningful, I pay the big firms. I got, I was running 20 to 30 grand a month in legal bills. Today, I'm between 40 and 60,000 a month. It's a lot, but I'm suing a municipality for a zoning case right now. They violated my civil rights. They destroyed my property value by violating Texas Senate Bill 929 that was just 2 years old. They already violated it. So I hired the best firm in town that wins these cases like that. And that's going to be the right answer on those kind of cases. So it's really important to find the right attorney for the right project.
Absolutely. And while you're on that roll, you've been like on a roll right now with litigation files, right? Because those are the 2 things. Well, there's one thing that you do, it's the litigation side of it in your business. What have you been like crushing it on in litigation?
A lot of folks don't like to do the real estate files that require that because it's expensive and slow and there's uncertainty. But again, we pick the right cases that we can cycle through fairly quickly. And when I take a project that's going to require litigation, that's when I go real deep on the research, and I don't take something. It's always a crapshoot when you get in a courtroom, but I take something that I look at and say, wow, if I lose this, like, it just ain't my day. And I was supposed to lose that day. I got a darn good shot at it. That's how we pick our projects. And the other day, someone was harassing me. I was harassing him. We're in a lawsuit, and he happened to message me on Facebook. So we went back and forth for a while.
Oh boy.
And he said, my attorney checked. You're in 30 lawsuits right now, and it doesn't even look like you do real estate. And my response was, if you're impressed by the amount of lawsuits, you should see how many deals I've got going. Because I only litigate 1 in 20.
I love it.
But those are the projects that can be a hassle. And we found that that's a great place to serve a gap in the market and have a lot of profit. Now, you have to be very careful, because when you get good at it, you don't want to cross a line that you shouldn't, because there are so many claims out there. Like, you don't want to just turn into a monster. So we keep it very narrow scope on profitable claims that we know we can handle. And I've gotten into some commercial deals where I realize how bad municipalities treat landowners, and most folks are scared and they don't have the budget to do anything about it. So I've taken the opposite stance and said, no, I'm going to stand up. So this week was a good win. I can't talk about the names of the municipalities, but I've got a couple of them just completely backed into a corner, and they have nowhere to turn. And the neat thing is, we start discovery, and because they brought me here, they're ready to settle. They're making offers. And I say, nope. I have subpoena power, and I have the right to do discovery right now. I want every email, every text message, every phone call you can recall you made. Put that down in your privilege log. If you can't share it with me, I want it all. I want to know everything you said about this property and the adjoining properties to everyone in the last 5 years. They have to disclose everything. And I am very certain there's going to be a lot of things that they wish they wouldn't have put in that email that's coming out. If you brought me here, we're going to air the dirty laundry. That might even change the way my settlement looks. It might even be a better settlement, but
Sure.
We're here. I just need another 60 days to dig around in the laundry basket.
You must love going to the depositions then.
I've been on both sides of that, right? Early on, I'd never been the deponent who is in the hot seat. So I love dragging the information out, getting it out there. But then I also had to be the person who they were digging at, even though I didn't do anything wrong. They're invasive, man. There's a lot they can get. Even when you're the plaintiff who believes they didn't do anything wrong, there's a lot that can happen. But I'll tell you, discovery is where a lawsuit is made. If you can get as much information in the beginning so that you don't have any surprises in discovery will just help you tighten it up and really get your smoking guns, then it's a really great tool.
Yeah, it's a real skill, because you got to really ask the right question. You got to phrase it the right way. I mean, yeah. And there's not all these boilerplate templates that I've seen all these books have. Like, if your case, your questions have to be very specific to that case and those circumstances with the defendant. And
we're actually leading into a civil rights violation right now that's not in the pleadings, but we're asking questions. And by the end of this deposition, they're going to understand we're teeing this up for a civil rights violation. And that's part of the skill of communicating in the deposition while getting information out. It's going to be a really wild ride for these folks soon.
And well, hopefully when it's all over, you can make a video on it and you can talk about it. But who knows? Maybe we'll come to that agreement.
No, absolutely. I won't. When you're in a situation like this, I don't have to agree to confidentiality. And if they don't want that, fine. I'm just not going to settle yet. I'll just continue on with this. Let's just keep going. But I actually have a podcast that I'm finalizing everything, and we're starting to call guests. I think I can start releasing episodes in about 8 weeks, and that's going to be a great place for some of this stuff.
Wow, that's great, man. What's the name of it? Have you guys come up with that yet?
I do. I've got it. It's called Dirty Deeds.
Dirty Deeds. I love it. That's so you.
If it didn't cost $30,000 to license the AC/DC song, that would be a perfect background song. But I don't know if I can spend $30,000 for that.
I don't know. Maybe you make a couple phone calls and you'll get that. It'd not be hard for you.
Yeah.
Logan, always so fun, man. We love your journey, love hearing about the new stuff. And I gotta say, some big fans of yours, Stephanie Shepard. I know she'll be tuning in and listening, unless Steph is listening right now. Huge fan. And I gotta say, kind of crazy. Michael Robertson, he's gonna be on the show. He found me through an episode with you and I because he knew you. And then he was like, I love what Logan does. I love his strategy. So shout out to Michael Robertson out there.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Our community is watching, but it's very tight knit, and everybody's seeing all these strategies. And it's about collaboration and bringing it together, right? So that it's a shout out to you for what you're doing and explaining it to people and throwing on your live events. I mean, I remember you threw your first one on like 2 years ago, and I was like, whoa, Logan's going all out for this. And then you did it again, and it was another sellout. So
Yeah.
love seeing it. And it's great that you get to do this. You know, Logan, I have a couple signature questions for you. One is, what is a project or deal that you most regret being a part of?
Well, it's one that stands out, and it actually affected how I decided to look at these deals. Early on, when folks would not take care of their responsibilities in property or threaten co-tenants, the co-owners, they could be really bad people. But one of the types of property that I will not really go after anymore at all is an occupied home with an owner who doesn't want to participate. And I'll tell you, this is actually crazy. The guy who's living in a house, he owned it 50-50 with his brother. When mama died, he never moved out. They inherited it through intestate succession, no will. Brother retired as a journalist, and he showed up and said, hey, brother, I'm going to move in. We both own this house. We're both older in life. We're going to be roommates. Brother came back out with a shotgun and said, this is my house. Get off my porch. You ever come back, I'll kill you. And it was such a big divergence from their whole life. He thought, what's going on here? He tried for 5 years. He didn't have a huge amount of resources, so he wasn't filing big lawsuits or whatever. He tried 5 years to get a hold of this house to live in it. Finally, he just walked away and said, forget it. I'll sell my share to you for pennies. So I staged a hell of a fight against this guy. And, you know, it just wasn't the right answer, because even though he was a monster, even though he wasn't taking the house, taking care of the house, it was falling over. He wasn't paying his taxes. He wanted to kill his brother. I mean, this guy was a POS. I still got so much negative feedback because people would say, you're going to take his house. I'm like, well, the tax guy is going to foreclose in a year or two anyway. I'm beating the tax guy to it, but I'm helping his brother. I didn't see it as a bad thing. And as I went through that process, I realized, you know, it's not great PR. It's not an easy deal to get done. And the hardest person to negotiate with is someone who doesn't have a ton of resources and needs to move out of the place they're living. After that deal, I just finally said, forget it. I'm not doing those anymore. So believe it or not, if a person living in it will sell me their share and their other shares outside of the house, I'll do that. But I'm not an aggressively adversarial and leave the house. I ain't fooling with that anymore. I learned that the hard way.
And I think a lot of investors come across that, right? Whether after probate or during probate or
now, here's what I will do. I will buy the brother's share and wait for the foreclosure to happen and get 50% of the excess proceeds. But I'm not going to file a partition lawsuit and wage a fight. I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah, you're just going to hold the 50% and just do it that way, which is a smart move too. I mean, hey, at least you got the 50%. But there's a lot of people that come across that same situation with owner occupied, not motivated, and actually wants to stay there. And then you're like, what do I do? So that's a great example. And that's coming from you, Logan. Like, you know, that's from somebody that like does this every day versus, hey, it's my first time.
You know, someone being in a negotiation that has no exit, that can't leave the negotiation, they're like a badger in the corner. They just start swinging. They don't have any better options, man. You want to be negotiating with somebody who can at least make the deal work. That person can't. You don't want that. But I will tell you, I have a chunk of my portfolio of siblings that hate their siblings and sold me their share for literally $1,000. If this dude lives 30 more years, it doesn't matter, because half of his house is worth $200,000 in the big MSA that it's in. So I'm going to get incredible returns as this generation, you know, goes to heaven.
Crazy. Well, that is a great story for people to actually pay attention to and listen to, because it comes up quite frequently.
You hear that a lot?
Well, I would say, I don't know about a lot, but there's definitely times I get the email of, hey, I got a deal. There's 4 children. 3 are ready to sell. The 4th one doesn't, but he's living in the house and doesn't want to move out. Bingo.
Yeah.
It's the same. That story right there that you told has come up from time to time. Now, the ones that are not occupied, totally vacant, whether land, house, you name it, those are definitely the ones that are workable in those scenarios. But the other ones, those are really tricky. I totally get it. And then explaining that to the judge, and then like, what's going to be the resolution? Are we going to go to mediation? Is there going to be a buyout? It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Logan, let me ask you this. If you had to go back and start this whole operation again, whether yourself or with the 5-6 business partners, and you had to start it from the ground up, knowing everything you have learned along the way, how would you have done it all over again?
This answer comes to mind immediately. I'm 42 years old. I own a huge business. When the market was hot, we were doing 30 to 40 million in sales. Last year, we did about half that. This year, with a subdivision involved, we'll probably do 50 million in sales. This is a substantial business, great profit. I got 4 incredible kids. I'm kind of young and healthy. I have great relationships here. And if I don't want to come to work, there are days where I just don't come here and the place doesn't burn down. The only thing I would have wanted to do was start earlier. I was a young, confused kid out with drugs and alcohol and was completely unproductive until I was 28 years old. I mean, it was, highway to hell quick. I wish I could have started a little earlier. Otherwise, man, this has been a hell of a run, dude. I don't know that I would really change much. I really don't.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. I mean, it's because you've learned so much along the way, right? Like, could you have done it faster? Could you have scaled even higher? Could you have made more money? Like, knowing everything you know now, but it wouldn't have led you to where you're at, right?
Yeah.
All those experiences.
It's a great place. I actually don't know that I could have done it better. And the other part about could you have made more money? We make a lot of money. And I realize, our partners distribute between $100,000 and $200,000 a year to themselves as their salary. That's what everybody's living on mostly. Mine's a little bit more than that, but not much. We live good lives and we have so much money left over. We can reinvest in these businesses and really grow stuff and have a lot of stability. But I realized once you get beyond that $200,000-$300,000 a year mark in income, your life doesn't change remarkably. Like, you might go get a more expensive truck, but it still gets you home and to work, and it's dependable and it's nice. You might move to a little bit better neighborhood, but I don't know. Your life doesn't remarkably change until you're paying yourself like 10 million a year and you have a jet and you live on your own island, So much more money every year. I mean, I've got it. And I've taken the years and said, I'm going to ball out. And I wasn't any happier. My life wasn't better. I just burned more money.
Yeah.
So, the extra money part, I don't know. Unless I get $100 million, like, I don't know that I need a hell of a lot more, really.
Yeah. Your lifestyle is your lifestyle. Like, that part's not changing. So that's great to hear. I mean, a lot of people have different experiences that have led them to where they are today. And
sure,
that's perfect. Love it.
Yeah.
Logan, you get into a lot of the litigation stuff. You get into a lot of the meetings with partners, or maybe talking with your team with a seller situation. How are you constantly sharpening your negotiation skills?
Being involved. That's a really fun part of this for me. It's a chess match, man. I really enjoy sitting down and understanding what's going on. And the more you listen before you start running your mouth, the better prepared you're going to be and your position. I really think it's the reps, like I said earlier about some other topics, being in the game. I will admit that I'm a very cerebral person. I have a lot of self-talk going on. I've heard some people have no self-talk going on up there. I'd love it. It'd be real quiet. But, you're always thinking, you're always going. You have a meeting, you leave, and you say, what did I do better? There's always this edge, and that's part of the excitement why we keep coming back to this place. I get called in probably once a week to go have a meeting with, sellers or an attorney or something. And I said, all right, bring me today. Let's do a bring today debrief. They bring me all up to date, tell me everything. And it's really fun. Now I say, okay, What's the problem? Okay, I think it's going to end like this. Here's our goal to get out of that room. And we go in, our goal is to get us there. And most times we get it these days. We're really practicing it all the time.
It's great. It's all about practice and
Reps.
Reps. Love it. Logan, always so much value you provide on these episodes. We love it. I love it. We appreciate it. And I know others that will find the episode through the social channels and YouTube and will say, let me find out more about this guy. Right. And we put up a lot of the things on the screen with the chyrons on where to find you, how to find you. And we want to see more of this. We want to see more of the videos, and we're excited to see Dirty Deeds. Dirty Deeds. It's going to be a video podcast.
Yeah. We'll get it uploaded to the streaming sites, but it will be available on YouTube. Al, I got to say, you're like my top 3 favorite hosts. I enjoy talking to you. You have an incredible memory. You remember things we talked about a couple years ago. You know this game as good as anybody. So you're such a great, engaging person on this topic, because most people can ask questions and be bewildered, but you're in it, it. So I love talking to you, man.
Thank you, man. Likewise. I mean, the feeling's mutual there. I love it because it's a lot of fun, right? The energy's there and the knowledge is there. And when you have a guest that is in this game every day, not doing any type of just education, but you guys are in the deals, and then you're talking about major numbers. I mean, and then also on the business strategies, that's a game changer. So we appreciate you, man. We love it. And we're excited to see the success. And I got to ask you, what's next for Logan?
I've never been a goal person. I never have. I come here and we just think everything through and we work to the next day. And I don't know where this is going, man. My kids are starting to get to the point where they've got a lot of activities, and lots going on. My youngest is 3, and we're getting to the point where we can start traveling a little bit more now. I don't know. I expect to see a lot more development lots shoot out of the back end of our business next year. I anticipate our market to start begin a recovery with interest rates going down, and we've been low now. I think the next year or so is going to be really fun. We grew a lot as the market was expanding last time, and we did great during this recovery. But it's my opinion that we got even smarter during this last recovery, or this kind of correction period. I'm really excited to see how we fire on all cylinders when the market's going up now. Last time we were building and learning. Now we're going to be executing. We will be swinging. So that's going to be a really fun thing. Where it's going to go, I don't know, but I think it's going to look great.
That's great, man. Well, we're excited to see this. We're excited to see the whole journey. And as I do at the end of my show, Logan, I do a segment called Final Words, Final Thoughts. Anything that you want to leave the audience with a lasting impact, final words. So as I do, final words, final thoughts, Logan Fullmer.
I would probably have to say your network is your net worth. I've worked really hard on that. And I don't know what the saying would be called, but I'll tell you, go do the reps. If you don't have it in you, that's okay. Go do something else. Don't feel bad about it. But if you have that fire in you, go do the reps, because you'll be really damn surprised what you wind up becoming one day. I was a young kid, all messed up in drugs and alcohol and divorced family, didn't think I was good enough. The person I have become today, by continuing to work hard and try to improve, is not a person I would ever imagine. I'm very happy. I'm very proud. And it's a really neat thing coming from that little junky, messed up kid. So folks can all do it. Go out there and put in the reps, man.
Boom. We're going to leave it there. Logan, you're the man. I hope to see you soon at a live event. We need another Logan live event.
We will next March.
Boom. He's already got in the books. Well, Logan, you're the man. Thank you for coming on the show, taking the time to share these values and provide this value to everybody in the audience. And we will catch up soon, brother.
You got it, brother. Bye, Al.
Take care. All right, everybody. You heard it from the man himself, Logan Fullmer. If you missed any of this episode, you must go back and check it out. A completely different episode than the last episode with Logan, which is another episode you got to go back and check out, because Logan has been through so many different experiences. I mean, from the other episode talking about all the strategies of buying out all the partial interest, to this strategy and talking about the greater goal and the greater gain to where this is going and how he's built out the team internally and the partners. I mean, There's so much to this. It's more than just direct mail and doing lead lists. It's all about combining everything together and putting it together and building relationships. It's what it's all about, right? And it's also all about you guys all out there. I see you all watching the show, tuning in, staying on, and learning from this, right? We all learn from others and what they're doing in their day. So keep watching, scan the QR code on the bottom of the screen. You don't want to miss us on the social channels, YouTube, Facebook, it's all out there. And the show is rolling. We are in part 2 of season 5, and we will see you all next week with another great episode with Philip Vincent. A crazy episode talking about the silver tsunami and what's coming. And he's seen it on the investor end. I've seen it on the lawyer end. The silver tsunami is coming. You're going to love it. You're going to check that out next week. We'll see you then. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.